Hey everybody, Mark Dawes here. Now, I've received an email today which asked me a really interesting question, so I wanted to share it with you. And fundamentally, the question is, can staff refuse to attend training even if the organisation has all COVID safeguards in place? Here's the content of that email. Morning, Mark. I have a query. Our staff physical intervention refreshers are commencing weekly during the next few months after a very long period of no training due to COVID, and the majority of staff are keen to get started and be refreshed. However, there's a few members of staff who are refusing to undertake the training on the basis that they do not wish to contract COVID. We have a COVID secure setting. Our training and risk assessments include all COVID secure safeguards which are in place. We are tested weekly. Staff wear PPE in the children's homes and are required to do the same on training. They have also all received the vaccine. Because we deal with vulnerable children who can become very challenging and at times violent, we want to do our utmost to keep everyone safe. Hence why we have decided to run these refreshers with all of the safeguards in place to see whether they have remembered the techniques, etc. after such a lengthy time period where no refresher training was given. These few staff are refusing on the basis that they are stating that they will need to be close to one another during the training, but when I asked them what they would do if there was an incident in the home, their response was that they would get involved because it's part of their job to do so. Have you any advice for me? And yes, I have. And before giving this advice, I consulted with a lawyer. I did some due diligence myself. But before you implement my advice, go and do your own due diligence and get it checked out for yourself. But here's the basis of my response. Hi. You raise an interesting question because the answer is as normal, although the circumstances are now far from normal. Let me explain. In short, the answer is as normal on the basis that if the risk assessment shows that the need to undertake PI refresher training is greater than the risk of staff catching the virus, then the training should go ahead, and that could be considered a reasonable management instruction. Therefore, any refusal by staff may be seen as a breach of their contract of employment. As far as I'm aware, the only legitimate grounds an employee would have for refusing refresher training would be under Regulation 8 of the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations, with protection provided for that refusal under Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act on the grounds of being exposed to serious and imminent danger. So what may constitute serious and imminent danger? Considering the current and ever-changing situation with regard to this virus and its transmission, employees could be placed in a position of serious and imminent danger if an employer had failed to put in place appropriate arrangements within the workplace to prevent the transmission of the virus. However, where an employer has put the necessary safeguards in place and reduced the risk to its lowest possible level, the employer may reasonably direct an employee to attend any work-based activity, including refresher training. On that basis, if an employee failed to comply with a reasonable management instruction, that could constitute a potential breach of contract by an employee, which could result in an employer taking disciplinary action against the member of staff. As you have stated that the staff who are refusing to attend are currently working in the environment that they are expected to intervene in, and that they have stated that they would be willing to physically intervene if they had to, and that all of the necessary COVID safeguards have been put in place as you describe, then I can't see any reason why they can't undertake refresher training, especially considering the potential risks involved in not refreshing their training and the potential harm that could occur as a result when dealing with vulnerable children who exhibit very challenging and violent behaviour. On that basis, if they refuse to undertake training, that should be treated as a normal disciplinary issue based on whatever your organisation's disciplinary procedures are. However, because the situation with this virus is one that has never happened before, it would be for a court to decide whether or not the staff had the right to refuse training based on all of the above. So on that basis, if the staff still refused to undertake training and were disciplined, they could decide to take their case or cases to an industrial tribunal and then the court and see what the court decides. I hope that helps, and feel free to come back to me if you have any more questions. So fundamentally, that's the answer to the question. Can staff refuse to undertake physical intervention refresher training if the organisation has put all the COVID safeguards in place? And what I mean by that is, if you don't train staff, there is a greater risk of people being hurt, assaulted, God forbid, killed. And, that risk is high by not training, and the risk of catching the virus is low, then training should take place. The issue that's not normal is we've never been in a situation like this before where we have this sort of pandemic. So there is no benchmark case precedent that can set a case on this, and it would have to go to court to be heard by the court and for the court to judge on that basis. But I think personally, and having checked this with a lawyer and having looked at all the health and safety regulations and everything else in relation to this, if the organisation has done everything it can possibly do to lower the risk to its lowest practicable level. And therefore, the need to train staff is greater because of the risk by not training staff, and the risk of catching the virus is very low. Then training should take place, and if staff refuse to do that, that should be treated under normal disciplinary procedures. I hope that helps. It's an interesting one. It made me think. And if you have any questions, and comments, leave them in the comments box below. I do appreciate them, actually. It gives me stuff to do. It gives me stuff to think about, and I'm more than happy to go and research stuff for you. So I hope that helps. Have a great Friday. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll speak to you soon. Stay safe.